but we are live on the Inside Talent podcast, webcast, international sensation that is Inside Talent. I'm here with Jason Putnam, who is the Chief Revenue Officer of Plum. You can get there by going to plum.io. Plum is a talent intelligence platform that helps employers assess job candidates and move them through their employment life cycle intelligently in a modern way. And we're here to debunk some myths of traditional assessments. We're going to talk about this more in depth at the TalentNet Live conference coming up near Yeti's headquarters in Austin, Texas. We've had to move to a slightly bigger venue. But Matt Charney is going to jump in there with Jason and have an extended conversation about this. We're going to tee it up today. And Jason, how are you? It's been a couple of months since we've seen each other in person. How's your 2024 going?
It's going well. It's always, I'll take my bravery badge for getting on a stage with Matt Charney. So I'll chalk that up as a bravery badge. It's good. It's really, beginning of the year started out relatively busy at home and slow in the HR tech world. So it was a good combination. That's kind of inverting now. And what we've seen a little bit, like a lot of people have seen in the industry, we had so much growth over the last 2 years. And then the market changed a lot kind of at the end of last year into this year. We're very blessed that we don't just sell to a TA solution. So we've seen really so much more inbound and interest on the talent management side and specific use cases for talent management as companies are looking for the year of efficiency and trying to get to productivity. We're seeing the interest level on that on the Plum side be as high as it's ever been.
So do you chalk that up to a certain extent to low churn in the employment ranks right now?
I don't think it's necessarily low churn. I think that's part of it. Certainly, TA was a boardroom pain point, which bleeds down to C-levels, which bleeds down, to the everyday people who are making decisions. But what I see now, and I don't think many companies want to say it this way, but they're ultimately trying to do more with less. Nobody broadcasts that, but that's what they're trying to do. So if we're keeping people, who are we keeping? We know we're going to have to give more work to individuals. Who are those individuals who can handle it? If we are keeping people, I want to keep people that we can move into other roles, right? Where maybe they're going to be flourish more in a particular role. So that's what I think it is. I think it's really, in this industry, there's this ebb and flow every 4 to 6 years where it's consolidation. Let's get everything into one thing, and then it's, hey, we want point solutions. Then there's consolidation. I really think we're in a consolidation market right now. Now, with the world being upside down, typically that market lasts 2 years. It could last 2 months. Who knows? Everything changed like 4 months ago, and it could go back 4 months from now. So
that's right. Yeah. So we seem to be in a holding pattern, right? We've got interesting things happening in the world as far as global conflicts. We're still seeing remnants of pandemic effects. We've got U.S. elections coming up, and so it does feel like there's a little bit of a holding pattern. It's starting to inch forward, as you said. At the beginning of the year, things were pretty much a deadlock standstill, and not so much now. I mean, things are starting to roll. I have seen that the HR technology vendor community is attempting to get ahead of it, right, and get out in front of these employers who will make some decisions on things and whose budgets will open back up later this year. But you're right, there are these sort of micro gestures in the industry every few months that kind of we saw this jobs report, or we saw this economic report, and we're going to reel it back in briefly. And some of that is due to the fact that there was a lot of money available, right, in the last 2 years. And a lot of companies took on investors and PE and things that eventually turn around and say, okay, it's time we want our money back. And so this notion of hiring efficiency, as you were talking, basically do more with less is important. And so, a talent intelligence platform can really help an employer make some informed decisions. So let's get into that real quick. What are the myths, the prevailing myths surrounding sort of traditional assessments in the talent space?
Yeah, I think let's unpack. I appreciate the question a lot. Let's unpack the word assessment because I think
Hmm.
there's some both positive and negative connotations to the word assessment. There are things that can be inferred and there are things that can be assessed, and we have products like that in our industry. But people have been assessed since they were babies, right?
Right.
Of all different things, and you have to understand like what are you assessing for, and why do you actually care? So there could be assessments to get your kids into a preschool, right? And that's a different type of assessment than what you would do at the NFL Combine versus a reading assessment versus a personality assessment. And it's just a big word, and I think when people hear the word assessment, there's a little bit of fear because people inherently focus on the things that they're bad at, and they think those things that they're bad at are going to be looked at negatively. So if you kind of deconstruct a human, I'm going to do it from a work perspective. There's kind of three elements to it. So one is kind of what they have learned or can learn. The industry calls them hard skills, right? There's different words, but that's kind of the most common. So think of things like Excel or using a CRM or driving a forklift or speaking a language. Those are all things you weren't born doing. You had to learn how to do those things. And those are all things that can either be inferred or assessed. So by inferring it, you may look at a resume and see Excel on there. You're inferring that that person was being honest, as an example, or that they know Excel at a particular level that you want, or you can assess for it. And the assessment part is something different. The other thing is how proficient you may be at a particular thing. So let's say your aptitude. How well do you know Excel? How proficient are you in English or Spanish or etc.? So if you think of like the kind of the hard skills side of things, I may say I know Excel, but how well do I know Excel? One you can infer, one you really need to assess, right? So if you think of you're a Java developer, there's tests, there's assessments you can take. They may not call them assessments, but ultimately you're being assessed on how well you know that different thing. The third aspect is those things that innately drive or drain us as people. Those things that come naturally to us. We in the industry we most often call them soft skills or power skills. I'm going to call them something else later, but I think we can agree that most things can be taught. Like we were not born knowing how to tie our shoes or ride our bike or use Excel or drive a forklift. But the other skills, these have to be assessed, right? They're not learned, they're innate. There's those things that come naturally. So I'm very high in innovation. I'm never going to wake up tomorrow going, I don't want to be innovative anymore. And those are the things that, if you think about jobs that you have had, Craig, and jobs I have had, we've had very similar jobs at different companies. And even though we're doing the exact same thing from a hard skills perspective, the jobs feel different to us, right? One place we may hop out of bed every morning excited to do the job, and when we're done, we're high-fiving our partner, versus doing the exact same job at another place. It may be that we dread getting out of bed, we dread opening our laptop, and we're having a drink when we're done at the end of the day. Even though we're doing the same job, those soft skills are things that come innately to us. Like, they're different in every person, but those are the things that make us feel powerful and belonging and much more productive, because they're the things that come naturally to us. And the science behind that, which is a type of science that's been around for a really long time, right? IO psychology. These are things you can measure, but you have to measure them via an assessment. And historically, there are things like DISC or Myers-Briggs and Plum and lots of different things. But the problem with assessments, if they're not set up correctly, is number one, they can be biased. Number two, people, unless you're giving them something in return, it's like this black box that they don't want to do. But if you're giving the human something in return to do that, and you're giving them things that they can utilize whether they get the job or not get the job, and things they can use in life, those things are very powerful. And when companies use those, I'm going to call them soft skills for right now, they tend to be, at least all the science points to, 4 times more predictive of success on a job than a resume. So if you can combine those two things, those are the things you can assess and infer. And it's not just do you know Excel? Do you have 10 years experience? But if I bring you in here, are you going to be somebody who hops out of bed every day to do the job? And the business impacts, like, I have tons of stats we can share, but the business impacts of that are huge.
So there's a huge focus right now on skills-based hiring, right? And so I think what we've just unpacked here is that means two things, right? Um, whereas in, I think, previous eras, we tend to hire people who on paper look like the people who are currently doing a good job.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But skills-based hiring kind of turns that on its ear. And what you're saying is add the additional element of soft skills-based hiring, and then you've got a really accurate picture.
I think the way I describe this kind of to people who aren't familiar with it and kind of not in the industry is, Craig, you and I know each other, but let's say, hey, I'm going to come meet you in Dallas, and you say, Jason, let's go to lunch. And I'm like, cool, where are we going? And you give me a street name. I'm never going to find you. I need two streets, right? I need a main street and a cross street. So think of it the same way. Think of it like longitude and latitude on a globe. Those hard skills that we've traditionally used in life, how long have you worked? Do you have a college degree? How well do you know Excel? That's the longitude on a globe. The soft skills are the latitude. And when you combine those two, that point by which you can bring somebody in, and when you're aligning them, not only are they eligible, do they have the skills to do the job, but are they going to be, quote unquote, happy in the job? And if OC Tanner had a really great culture report that came out. These are really impactful numbers that when employees feel connected to an opportunity based on their strengths, so strengths could be both of those, primarily it's the soft skills, right? The things that get me out of bed every day. Those employees have a 322% increase in productivity. They stay 3 years longer, and they experience burnout nearly 70% less than other people. So if you think of that from the human impact, that's awesome. If you think about that from, the year of efficiency or productivity, if you use those things together, the people are going to be 300% or more productive, because they're going to enjoy doing the job. They're going to hop out of bed. They're not going to look for other things to do. And they're going to stay 3 years longer. So all the impact on the business is going to be massive. You don't, and the less technical the job is, the less you need to rely on hard skills. I mean, if you're hiring a picker packer, like, is somebody going to be, can you teach somebody to move a box from here to there? Sure. But if that person really wants that job in that culture, in that environment, they're going to stay there forever because they're really driven by that. So the word, kind of skills-based, nobody really knows what it means. It's kind of like quality of hire. Nobody can define it. But skills are just a combination of things. And I really want to think of them more as like the way you're going to look at that person. So if you're the hiring manager and you look at that person and say, is that person doing a good job? We can look at it several different ways, right? Like, are they hitting quota? Are they doing a good job? But also, are they a fit? Are they happy every day? Are they being productive? And ultimately, like this year, I think comes down to productivity. We have clients who don't use hard skills at all for some of low-level jobs. They just use Plum. They don't even use a resume. And they have other customers, like, I don't want to say that go hire a CFO who's a 98 Plum match, but he or she doesn't know Excel. No, like, you can't do that.
Right.
But if they're a 98 Plum match and they have 9 out of 10 hard skills, they're going to be a way better match, even 7 out of 10 hard skills, than somebody who psychometrically is a 30% match for soft skills, even if they have 10 out of 10 hard skills.
So that kind of gives me a good picture of what traditional assessment wouldn't do, right? It's not going to measure someone's motivations, certainly. And that's one of the things that we look for. I mean, is this person excited? And so, I guess explain for our listeners and viewers, how is Plum technically different than a traditional assessment?
Yeah, not to make it a Plum pitch, but I appreciate the question, because I think that's understanding how we're different is why we're scaling and winning. I think we won 56 awards last year. We're different in certain ways, but we're very similar in other ways. So if you think about what we're assessing, we are assessing personality, just like many other personality tests do. That's one aspect of what we do. We also assess some cognitive stuff. Now, what's key with ours is there's no language or math, so it can't be biased, right? It doesn't discriminate against certain socioeconomic groups. And we measure in that way this thing called fluid intelligence. How do you solve kind of net new problems? And then we measure, I'll call it social intelligence. Think of it like EQ, but way more scientific. This is all IO psychology stuff that we've built over the last 12 years. And then we also measure leadership potential that's not exposed to the applicant, but it's exposed ultimately when you hire it. But the difference here is a couplefold. Number one, the experience that the human is taking. So credit to the founding team here, who's still here from nearly 12 years ago. Prior to this, they had a software company for children with special needs. So they were all about kind of the user experience. So they put the human first. So now when we have clients using Plum, and they use it for every hire, every employee. We have one customer who has 176,000 employees, all who have access to Plum, and they use it on every hire, like at the top of the funnel. And the reason they do that, it's actually a positive brand experience. So we've built the assessment to be very user-friendly. But we've also built it that as soon as that human is done with the assessment, whether they're an applicant and they get the job or not get the job, or they just randomly show up to Plum, we get about 50,000 people a month who take the assessment, and probably 5 to 10,000 are organic. They just show up to Plum and take it because they want to know more about themselves. So that the human gets something in return immediately as soon as they finish it. Think if they get a full kind of like career management profile, all their top talents, what drives them, what drains them, how to deal with peers, how to deal with their boss, how to deal in certain situations. So number one, that's what's really different. The completion rate's the highest in the industry. It's in the mid 90s because people have a good user experience with it. The other big difference is the hard part about assessments is scalability. So if you think of legacy assessments, and again, the science is great, they all work. Like the science has been proven for 100 years, it works. And when you do all the testing, whether it's Plum or anybody else, they're very, very predictive of success on a job. The hard part with legacy assessments, and anybody who's been doing this for any period of time is aware of this, is it's a lot of consulting-y stuff. So somebody has to take the assessment, then you need either a secret decoder ring, you have to have somebody in your office or multiple people who are experts on IO psychology, or you go bring in a big consulting firm. The assessment's one part, but what do you match that to that's both legal and job relevant is actually the magic of Plum. Traditionally, what you've had to do as an employer is you either get a big group of people together and you build some kind of competency model. A lot of times you're going to bring an outside consultant in and they're going to talk to 20, 30, 40, 50 people. They're going to build a competency model of what success should look like in that role right now. And then you match candidates to that. That takes 140 hours per job of consulting time, and it's very expensive. So because of the cost of it and the labor intensity of it, assessments have normally been used very siloed, either at the executive level, because it's expensive and you're going to quote unquote get more value there, or at high volume because you can do it once and hire a bunch. So a lot of companies have left out everyone in the middle, or they start building kind of siloed assessments. This one's for sales or this one's for this. But all the science points to you can use relatively the same assessment if you're looking at soft skills, right? Those innate abilities. The magic of Plum is we've replaced the need for that 140 hours. We allow the clients to build their own competency model. We call it a match criteria within the technology. It takes 8 minutes. So now, because the scalability is there, which wasn't there in a traditional consulting model, even for legacy assessments, you still need people. In this, you can build it all through technology. We have a whole team of IOs who roll up through me who are there to support if you need them. But because it's only 8 minutes, a couple things are true. Number one, you can match every person to every job. You're not leaving any job or any person out, and you can match them to every situation. Is it succession planning? Who should be our next leaders? Should this person from an internal mobility move laterally or vertically? Who should be our next CEO, or who should move from sales into marketing? All that situation is there, and you can do it. And if the job changes tomorrow, or a new CEO comes in, or a new manager's there, in just 8 minutes, you can refresh that and make sure you still have the right talent in the right place, and you're bringing the right people in who are aligned to do that.
So it's compelling, right? I mean, for an employer to want to be able to do that cost effectively at scale for every level of employee. How do you, as an employer, not you specifically, but how does the employer and how does Plum message to potential hires, job candidates, that this is for your own good? We are helping you opt into a better situation.
Yeah, what's really beautiful is over the last 11 plus years, when number one, the volume per month goes up, right? 30, 40, 50,000. It's still climbing as we add new clients and more branding. So when I'm going to answer your question a couple different ways. So the first way is it's messaged to them on the front end. So if I'm on Indeed or whatever, and I'm applying for a job at John Hancock, as an example, or Citibank, it's going to say, upload your resume, and here's Plum, and here's why you should take Plum, right? It's not this black box, and we help with that messaging. But as soon as they're done, as we said, they get something in return. They get their Plum profile. Right. If you were to go search on LinkedIn right now, Plum Top Talents, you will see by the minute people sharing their Plum results publicly. So that does a couple of things. Number one, it's great brand for our clients. Mm-hmm. Number two, me as a job seeker, or even as an employee who's taking Plum because my corporation decided to bring it in, I just see this frothiness out there of everyone sharing their results because I'm getting value out of it. And the completion rate's so high because we've done a good job of both the company branding the experience, but also Plum branding the experience and the results that come back to them.
So I think that's fascinating. I feel like, and I mean, I just know this from being in recruiting for so long. Traditional assessments have a negative stigma, right, with job candidates. And what you're telling me here, which I've always thought is fascinating about Plum, is that a job candidate gets an instant reward. They have something that they can use for employment anywhere,
forever.
and right, and they have a roadmap to their happiness and success.
And they do, and it's really beneficial, and we're continuing to iterate on both sides of the house, right, from the human side as well as the employer value. What we found is the more value you drive for the human, either an applicant or an employee or an organic user, innately the more value the corporation is going to get. So if you think of other products out there that are not necessarily assessed,
Yeah.
but inferred, on average, their adoption rate when you want to move to a skills-based organization, let's say you're bringing a talent intelligence solution in, it all sounds great until it doesn't work. Right. And what I mean by that is the product works, but if only 40%, which is about what most companies are seeing, about 40% of their employees are actually adopting it, which means as the employer, sure, that 40% is getting some value, but you're missing data on 60% of your employees. And it's just not engaging. And their definition of kind of stickiness is that that person logs in once a year. Like, we want people logging into Plum every day, whether you're an applicant or you're a current employee at your company. We want to provide value every day. So when you roll out Plum on the employee side, it's almost 100% adoption because they're getting value, and it's not this top-down command and control like you and I grew up, Craig, like do it because we said.
Right.
We're giving this value, and the Trojan horse a little bit is because it's human-led, the employer is getting all the value they need because it's on nearly 100% of their people. So we've really inverted the value prop to be about the human first and not about the employer, because the employer is going to get the value if the human finds the value anyway.
All right. So how has, I mean, I know that Plum continues to iterate. How has AI and automation aided in the future and current state of Plum?
Yeah, I'm either going to give a really, really popular answer or an answer that everyone's going to hate. The answer is virtually zero. We don't use AI. That's not saying in the future. It's not saying in the future we won't.
Right.
But when it comes to personality and making decisions on hiring humans, you should not use AI. There is, like, my previous company is an AI company. I'm a big fan of AI, but I think because AI is being used so much now, actually kind of the data set that we have becomes more valuable. And let me explain to you what I mean. So, and this is a bit of a soapbox. So let me go off on my soapbox for a minute. If you think about a story, and Craig, you and I have been, and anybody listening has been through here, there's been times that we had to promote somebody and we're excited to promote that person. And there's times we've had to fire people. And if you were to run through an exercise, and I want you guys to do it in your head as well, like, hey, I'm going to promote Susie or Johnny. And if you were asked, why am I promoting Susie or Johnny? We're going to say things like, Susie's driven. Johnny finishes what he starts. Like, he's great with teammates. Oh, Susie always brings innovative ways and clever ways to solve a problem. And if ultimately we're going to fire somebody, what do we say when that's going to happen? He never finishes what he starts. And we may even say he has too innovative ideas for what we're trying to do. Wasn't a team player. Everything I just said are not hard skills. They are all soft skills. So we are making promotion decisions as an organization and firing decisions, nothing to do with hard skills, yet every company uses hard skills to hire. Like, that level of disconnect to me is actually what's wrong in the industry. We are making promotions and firing decisions based on things that are innate to people versus we're using hard skills to bring them in. So with that soapbox kind of as the linchpin, when you look at technology out there that uses AI, they're going to scrape a resume, match it to a bag of keywords from a job description. And they're inferring things. If you're a teacher, you'd be a good project manager, whatever. With generative AI now, the problem is going to get exponentially worse because, number one, with AI, I can apply to 1,000 jobs in a second. Not literally, but a lot. But I can also upload my resume and upload a job description and say, make it perfectly match.
Right.
So before, when we were looking at our funnel, we had gradients. Oh, this on somewhere there's a bell curve, right? This person's great because they're over here. These people are not great because they don't match. Yeah. It's going to be now binary decisions. They're either 100% match or a 0% match. and there's going to be no gradients in between. The only gradients we're going to see are, and it's going to be incredibly biased, people who either because of disabilities or age don't have the same access to AI technology, or there's some type of learning disability or disability in general where they can't access it. So now we're actually being more biased because of AI than less biased of AI, because everyone's going to get through the process, even if they actually don't have the skills, just because they wrote their resume to say they have the skills. Whereas Plum, like, you can't fake a personality test. It's a forced choice. You don't know what you're being matched to, so people are just honest, right? Do you prefer this or this? Which best describes you? I prefer this. And because you only take it once and it can match you to a bunch of different jobs, like, we don't want AI in that process. There are places for AI, meaning when we look at our data in aggregate, do we see patterns? Or if we start adding other tools in there, like we may want to use AI to speed things up. But in the actual psychometric part of it, we don't want to use AI at all.
Right. Yeah. And it's not much different really than how recruiters have searched for resumes with keywords in their inbox in the past, right? There's not a ton of difference there. There might be some assumption ability by generative AI, but the number of recruiters who can use instinct and gut feeling and experience to select between two candidates that look the same on paper is dwindling, right? That just barely exists anymore. It's not like when you and I started.
What we're trying to do is have Plum like be that gut check to your gut check.
That's it.
You know, and I want to call these skills like performance skills. They're not hard skills or soft skills. They're right. Performance skills. And if I'm going to promote somebody, or, you know, I'm in a lifeboat and I can only pull 3 or 4 people in that boat, who am I pulling in the boat? And again, I'm not saying that just because somebody's a 98 Plum match that you should hire them, but it is a data element. It's a really important data element from that longitude and latitudinal perspective, that we have a ton of studies that if you have 2 people who look exactly the same and one's a higher Plum match, it's an easy decision. But what if this person has 10 years experience and this person has 5? We've built processes today where we're screening people out because there's no other way to do it. We can't look at 1,000 resumes anymore. Right. So we throw these things like 10 years experience. Well, what if the best candidate has 9.2 years experience? Like, you're out. And it's like, most of our clients put the Plum data first, and it doesn't have to be Plum, just this type of data first, then look at the eligibility from a hard skills. Because again, even if you need to upskill them a little, they're going to be 300% more productive and stay 3 years longer. And that's more important on the business, pulling that thread from TA through to TM, than it is giving the hiring manager exactly what he or she wanted, 10 out of 10 hard skills.
Interestingly, I've seen over the last 3 years or so, talent acquisition slowly but surely being pulled into TM more and more, right? So the few pros that we have left working inside an employer's environment are having to do more things, right? And talent management is important. So I encourage my colleagues out there to embrace technology like we're discussing today, because it will help you make decisions. It will help you keep your job long term and do a better job of what you're doing, and learn more about talent management than just from your experience in hiring and onboarding. And this is, just like we should all probably be learning Chat GPT prompts, we should all be studying talent management. And it is the future. We will do more with less forever. That's
100%.
That's basic, but the economy and jobs will still grow because we're just going to get bigger and bigger. So, but departments might shrink. There is a reason that Plum is very successful.
But it's not new. This has happened. It seems new to us. This has happened forever. Right?
Forever.
You need a bunch of people, a bunch of lumberjacks cutting down trees, and now you don't, because they have machines that do that.
Right.
And it's just a natural evolution. Like, we shouldn't be scared of AI, nor was I, wanted to crap all over it. That's not the case. It's just why we're not using it. Mm-hmm. But your TATM thing is really interesting, because when we find kind of the perfect customer that, it's like your first date and you're getting married, they are the ones where talent acquisition and talent management have already been brought together. And I think of it a lot like marketing and sales. So let's get out of HR for a minute. when things aren't going well and those two groups are not aligned, sales says we have horrible marketing and marketing says we have horrible sales.
Yep.
When they are aligned under a certain leadership and they have the respect and the trust of each other, when things are bad, they work together to fix the problem. And if you think about the story we just told of, we use hard skills to hire, but we promote and fire for soft skills, keeping it simple. That is TA and TM. That's the disconnection they have. If you want retention and we want to start prioritizing the things that drive performance and retention, those are TM words. Those are the skills that need to be put into hiring.
That's right.
The hard skills are secondary. So what happens is you bring this perfect, the perfect guy in on paper, the perfect girl in on paper. By the time they're onboarded, everyone realizes they're not the right hire. And let's say they're really driven by teamwork. Well, if they're in an environment where they never get to see their teammates, like they're going to be really drained every day. Mm-hmm. If this is a job that requires a ton of communication and they're introverted, this is all stuff you can measure with assessments and assess it. Then they're going to be looking for other jobs soon, right? If they're a very innovative person and you just have them doing the same mundane tasks every day, even though they can do the job, it's not can they or can they not do the job, but they're going to be miserable in that job, which is going to make them less productive and it's going to make them burn out and leave sooner. But yet that disconnect between we hire for these words, but we promote and fire for these words, like that is the disconnect that's going on. And what we're trying to say is take those things that you know are successful in talent management and pull them into talent acquisition so you can make better decisions. So what ends up happening is, as an example here, we ask hiring managers, because they're involved in this with our clients, would you rehire your Plum recommended match at the 90-day mark? And many of them ask at the 1 year mark. That number varies from like 90 to 93% say yes. Because we're taking the things that they know to be true for promotions and we pull it in and prioritize it on the front end. So you're prioritizing the things that actually matter in the job versus just those hard skills that can be taught later.
Yeah, I think it's an important distinction because we do make promotion skills and even does this person get to keep their job skills? Mm-hmm. Based on, and these decisions are based on politics. Mm-hmm. And the politics are based on that person's innate abilities.
Yes.
Yep. And that's almost 100% the situation, right? We don't recognize that up front. We recognize who looks like an easy hire, right? Who looks like a no-brainer. And that's what we tend to do. And so I appreciate the fact that there are plums in the world. I've gotten multiple jobs over my tenure by being assessed, and I'm all for it. So, and one thing that I'm also pretty impressed with is that in a world, right? I wrote a book called Hiring Humans, which is about the proliferation of automation and AI and how we can continue to keep the human element as part of it in a world where 80% of HR tech companies are waving the AI flag around. Plum is proudly saying, not important.
Yeah,
not for us.
Yeah. There's a place for what AI should do is not dehumanize us, but make us more human, right? That's right. It should take on those tasks that none of us want to do so we can actually connect more at a human level. And again, assessments aren't bad. We actually all get assessed and we assess each other every day in a really funny way, right? And just one quick story to your point, like we have a customer who was buying another company and part of the acquisition, there was 100-person sales team and they could only keep half. So how do we normally do it, right? Who's at quota? Let's draw that line. We'll keep this group and not keep this group.
Yeah.
They use Plum instead. And they use Plum to match against, I'm not going to use the word culture, but against what they were looking for. And they found that throughout that stack, there was different people. And some of them were a great fit at the bottom of the stack. But listen, if that person's never sold anything, like that's an easy decision, but at least you know. But right. What they found really interestingly, because of the leadership potential, was there was a whole group in the middle who may have been historically 70, 80% of quota, like all the time. But that group had the highest leadership potential. But what they usually did is who's the highest in quota, and they promoted that person. Those people were the lowest in leadership potential. We've seen this our whole life.
Yeah.
You take number of performance and you say that person should be our leader.
Right.
That person's now leading people and they shouldn't be leading people. So what they were able to do is take this, it was actually a pretty underrepresented group, by the way, ton of women, ton of minorities. They were able to take that group, keep them, put them on leadership tracks, and then eventually have them be the sales managers for these people, because that was better aligned with the role they should be in and the role they should be in at the acquiring company.
That's an amazing story. And it follows my notion that hiring managers are a myth, right? They're in their job because they were good at their old job and not because they have any training or skills in managing or hiring.
Yes.
Right. And so that's a really good story. I would love to, when we get together in person again in less than 2 weeks,
Yeah.
I want to know more about this customer, and that's just a fantastic story.
It's I think our job, when I say our job, I don't just mean us, but I'm a leader in a company, I manage people, I'm an employee, I'm in the industry, but and everybody out there, I believe our job is to provide a path for candidates and employees that allow them to flourish. Mm-hmm. If that means they need to leave our company, leave our company. If that means you're going to flourish in your career, and we should own that. But when they do flourish and they flourish for us, that business will thrive. It goes back to the stats, right? If that person's 300% more productive, you're getting 3 times the value than going and hiring 3 people who weren't a good match. And they're going to stay longer. Think of all the costs that saves us as a business. And to me, it's just like, that's the charter we should own, not in HR. It's the charter a CEO should own, right? Both because they should care about their people, but number 2, the financial impacts on doing it right are huge.
The financial impacts are huge, and it gets us past a culture of turnover, right? Even at the executive level.
Yep.
One of the biggest obstacles to success of an HR technology vendor is turnover in talent acquisition, right? Because the institutional knowledge of why we selected this in the first place, what the contract says, what levers should be pulled, are all gone. And CEOs are really no different, no better. They are mostly in it for short-term gain. And if they had the right mindset that, I would stay forever if I could, and I'm going to build a company that is sustainable, then they would be doing all these things as well.
Yeah, I mean,
all the right things.
I'm a C-level exec at Plum. I've been a C-level exec in this industry for a long time. And I say that I promise with humility.
Yeah.
I wasn't looking to come work at Plum. I met Caitlin. I had 7 job offers. I was leaving my previous company. She knew what she was looking for in a CRO. I took the Plum assessment. I was going to sit on the board. I ended up being a 95 out of 100. Forget my resume. Like, who I was as a person was in the upper 5% of what Caitlin, the executive team, were looking for.
Yeah.
I could have been a 20 at another company. But I turned down, my resume's fine. I know I could do the job. I turned down all those other jobs and jobs all the time while I'm here, right? Plum is the best non-turnover thing for me, because I hop out of bed every day loving what I do, even though my resume could be used at 50 other companies. Yeah. Like, you can't replicate the feeling I get getting out of bed every day and the feeling I get when I'm like a better father and husband, to my family when I leave the end of the day. I've had jobs where I wasn't like that. Same job, but hated the job every day because it wasn't aligned to who I was as a human.
Right.
My top 2 Plum talents are embracing diversity, which means I care about people, and innovation. And we're a very innovative company. If I don't get to use those things every day, or worst case, I'm at a company that doesn't care about people, I'm going to leave. And I'm not going to go the extra mile. I'm not going to be 300% more productive. And that's me to your point, Craig, as a C-level exec. But that is true for somebody who's a garbage man or a janitor or a hairdresser.
Sure.
Like, there are people who love being hairdressers. They may not like it at this place, but they love it at this place. It's true for every level. Humans are humans.
Well, it's clear that you do love your job, and I'm glad to consider you a friend and a colleague for sure. And we will talk a lot more about this coming up soon at the TalentNet Live Conference. You can find out more about that and register for the event at talenttexas.com. And we will look forward to seeing you there. Thank you, Jason, and thank you, Plum, for being a part of the TalentNet event and our community. We appreciate you.
Thanks, my friend. Appreciate it.
All right.